Just a general comment. I understand there may be some people from Radnor out there. During public comment, we're going to ask that you consolidate your thoughts to one or two people to make those. We've got work to do here, but we don't want to get bogged down with a long line of comments. But if you want to consolidate, we're more than happy to accommodate that. Can you do the roll call, Heather?
Okay.
Here.
Ms. McGowan?
Here.
Mr. Winterhalter?
Here.
Mr. Weiner?
Here.
Mr. Edwards?
Here.
Evans?
He is running late. He called me.
Mr. Guy indicated he will not be here.
We'll start with a moment of silence, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and with liberty and justice for all. Any members have any comments on the agenda for tonight?
Nope.
I assume not. We'll hold off public comment till after we've had discussions. We have minutes from August 24th. Do we have any comments on those?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve the minutes of August the 24th.
We have a second.
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved.
Note, I'll abstain from that since I was not here on that day.
That's fine. Thank you. And so next up, our item on the agenda tonight is 3111 Sawmill Road.
Hi, sorry, again, I'll introduce myself. My name is Adam Matlawski. I'm attorney. The office is in media. Represent Tom Pereira, who's the owner of the property at 3111 Sawmill Road. And what's been proposed is a 3-lot subdivision. There's property is currently approved with a single house. The proposal is to subdivide the property into 3 lots to take down the existing house and build 3 new single-family residences. Property's a little bit over 12 acres in size. It's located in your R1 district. They're proposing public water, public sewer for this property. We have been to the zoning board, obtained some relief with respect to ability to use a shared driveway for 2 of the lots, and some other relief that we can get into a little bit. One of which is has to do with street frontage because of the shape of the lot. But the zoning board did grant the relief that was requested. I think some of you may have been. We were here before with a sketch plan of this. I think,
Some time ago.
yeah, it was before we went to the zoning board. So that was I'm going to say probably toward the end of last year. Yeah, I would think.
Yeah.
But if I can, what I'd like to do is introduce to you Mike Damon from Damon Engineers, who will go through the plans with you and just give you an idea. We also have our arborist here is with us tonight. Because we had a little bit of a talk with your tree commission at 5 o'clock today on some things. And then this is Mr. Pereira on the far end here. So with that, if I could turn it over to Mike Damon and he'll talk you through the plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks everyone for your time tonight. As Adam said, my name is Mike Damon. I'm a project manager with H. Gilroy Damon Associates. Adam brought up some important points that I was going to go over. I won't bore you and reiterate those. But this design with the 3-lot subdivision originated with our sketch plan last year. And as he said, we got some zoning relief earlier this year. So, getting right into it, this design minimizes impacts and disturbance to the environmentally sensitive parts of this property. And as he said, it's a 12-acre property. There's a portion, the top right-hand portion is traversed by Darby Creek. Thomas Run is a small stream that runs from east to west, or I'm sorry, west to east on the property. There is large floodplain and wetland areas around Thomas Run, the majority of which are on the Sawmill side of the stream. On the bar side of the stream, which I'm calling the high side of the property, there's a steeper slope, so there's less floodplain. As Adam said, this is Tom's residence. It's served by a long driveway, which goes up the left-hand side of the property, and it crosses Thomas Run using a culvert, which is a dual 36-inch culvert. It's a little undersized. So the main impact of the main way that culvert is going to be improved is really important to the flooding that's potentially flooding upstream of the property. The residents that are to the west have presently this dual 36-inch culvert is undersized, it's overflowed, and it's somewhat silted in. So our plan is proposing a highway grade box culvert, which is 4 feet tall by 10 foot wide and 30 foot long. This would be able to withstand highway traffic, good enough for Westchester Pike, good enough for fire trucks, certainly. And it's a big improvement to what's there now. As I said, the ability for the Thomas Run to extend through that culvert unimpeded, it helps with the flooding upstream. The other ways that this project is minimizing the impacts of the disturbance to these environmentally sensitive areas. The stormwater management, which is on our sheet C2 on our post-construction sheet, reduces the present runoff conditions significantly to levels that are below what's present there. I know that it's hard to understand that, but we're utilizing 2 rain gardens and 2 infiltration beds. Both are well-sized. I don't know why this is shooting back, but this is 3. I'll just try to hold it further away and talk louder. So the 4 stormwater management control areas are key in controlling and in minimizing the impacts downstream, both downstream and we're utilizing 16 storm inlets. We're piping all the runoff from the roofs for the 3 houses directly into the infiltration beds and the rain gardens. So as I said, we're significantly reducing the runoff from the present conditions. So it's actually an improvement. And I can get into that a little bit more if you guys have any questions. During construction, we're proposing temporary erosion control measures in the way of compost filter socks. They prevent silt. They allow water to pass, but do not allow silt to pass by. We are utilizing construction protection and tree protection fence in areas where we don't want disturbance. And then erosion control matting is not on our current plans, but that was brought up by the engineer. And we think that that's a really good way to kind of offset and mitigate any impacts to the steep slopes. There are significant areas of steep slopes on the properties. What we're impacting and disturbing is very minimal. By my calculations, about 11% of the steep slopes is proposed to be impacted and 0% of the very steep slopes. And we do have a landscaping plan. We do need to make some improvements to that plan that shows what trees are being disturbed and how we're going to replace those and how we're going to satisfy the ordinance requirements there. We're asking for waivers for this to be reviewed as a preliminary final. As Adam said, it already went as a sketch plan. We feel like this is a minor 3-lot subdivision and that this is, reasonable. The other waiver we're asking for is to allow a shared driveway for lots 1 and 2. And to not provide curb and sidewalk in this particular area. I don't think there's much curb and sidewalk on Sawmill Road, especially in this area. And the final thing is, and it's not clear to me whether this is a waiver request or just a township approval that's required, but we're asking for a 25-foot riparian buffer rather than a 50-foot riparian buffer. And I will say that we're not encroaching on the 25-foot riparian buffer at all with this proposal. Lot 3, which I call the low lot, is closest to Sawmill Road. And that, what I would say about that is the floodplain is so significant there in the wetland area that, in actuality, the house is 120 feet to the top of bank of Thomas Run. So it's really far from the creek, but there's a lot of floodplain area there. So we feel that it's a reasonable request to allow a 25-foot riparian buffer there for that reason. And I guess, and going through the engineer's review, there's some really, really good comments and we appreciate the feedback. And I feel like we're going to be able to comply with everything that's on the engineer's review. I already mentioned the waivers and there were some recommendations that we think are good ideas. For example, the area within the trail easement be graded to provide a level area for the trail. I think that's a good recommendation. And also, if the curbs are not provided, a stabilized vegetated shoulder can be provided. And we think that that's a good recommendation. We've been in communication with the fire marshal. We will comply with all the comments on his review. He has already expressed that he is, it's acceptable. We have a sketch of a 60-foot turnaround that's would allow a fire truck to pull up on the shared driveway and actually back up so that it could turn back around and exit the properties. So that I felt was worth mentioning. The arborist review, and maybe our arborist can speak to it. I think we're going to be able to comply with everything. We have a little more work to do on our plans in terms of identifying which trees are being removed and getting our replacement tree calculations up to par with what we're taking out. And then finally, I did receive the sewer authority review and, briefly looked at it. The sewage module has been handled by another engineering firm. And, but I feel like we can comply with the review letter as it stands. And then I would just say, if you guys have any questions or comments or concerns, I'm happy to discuss them.
Yeah, I have a question, something, so you have a variance, provide a shared driveway, and you're requesting a waiver for a shared driveway for lots 1 and 2.
The variance.
So I guess the Pannoni letter predates the.
Well, there's two things. So in their code, there is a zoning code language which requires, which speaks to 1 lot, 1 driveway. There's also a subdivision and land development code that also has the same requirement. So it's in 2 places in our code. The more stringent one is always zoning, and they've already have gone to zoning hearing board and have obtained that relief. So it would be concurrent with this application. It would also be the waiver that would go with it.
Would suggest, I think it's almost an anomaly that it's in both codes. So we went and got the zoning first, because that's the harder, as Eric said, that's the tougher standard to meet. But yes, we are requesting that waiver because technically it's in the land development code as well.
And then I guess, Eric and I were speaking, so you're going to need to get the EPA and the Delco conservation districts all to kind of line up behind this.
With respect to the culvert work and all that, yes. I mean, first of all, I believe it's a condition of the zoning approval for one thing, and secondly, obviously we have to get permits, and so we understand that absolutely. DEP will be able to weigh in on this.
And then Delaware County, that's still outstanding? Or has that not been submitted?
That's probably not been submitted yet. The
Okay.
conservation district.
No, I meant the Delaware County Planning Commission.
No, the plans have gone, but we haven't seen the review yet.
Okay.
I have a question about the riparian buffer and how that's calculated. It appears on the plan that the riparian buffer is made located with reference to the 100-year floodplain. And I guess my question maybe for Eric is, shouldn't that be located with respect to a delineated wetland as opposed to a 100-year floodplain, which I think is more of an insurance concept than a ecological concept? Should there be, or don't we require an actual wetlands delineation?
There is. So if you, and after I talk, you can help maybe, so on the plan, there is both the wetland delineation, and then they do have a 25-foot riparian buffer measured off of the wetlands. So the most prominent place, if you wanted to look at that, is on that lot 3, just to the rear of the house, you'll see that black dashed line. That's the riparian buffer that they're noting to be 25 feet away from that fainter solid line with the triangles in it. Those triangles are the location of the wetlands that have been delineated.
Okay, so the delineation is in the sort of the faded line there.
Correct. Yes, with the triangles, that little text that you see next to the triangles, that's the point where they flag and find the wetlands in the property.
Okay. And similarly, the lines in the upper corner in lot 2, that represents a wetlands delineation?
Correct, yes, that up in the upper right-hand corner of the property there, there's wetlands, abutting Darby Creek.
Yeah.
Up on that corner of the property.
So they're actually, the buffer actually, even though it's by reference to the 100-year floodplain, the 100-year floodplain is somewhat larger than the wetlands area in that area.
Right, so I see you. Yes, I see up there, it appears that oh, I see what he's saying. The 25-foot up here seems to be looking off of the floodplain as opposed to the wetlands, which actually makes it a larger step back there.
I got it.
I think maybe that was from the top of bank of the creek at 25.
Okay.
Not to confuse things, but yeah, with the wetlands extended further than the floodplain, the wetlands would be what you would want, that where that buffer would start.
Do you know when the last floodplain survey was completed?
So Darby Creek is a zone AE, and I do not know when the last FEMA study was done. And this floodplain is shown, you know, by their numbers that are provided in their base flood elevation and FEMA's maps.
So
Whereas
the current floodplain maps in this area, which is FEMA's mapping, is 2009.
right.
They cycle, FEMA cycles through on a basis of, and it's usually somewhere between 10 to 15 years or so, if they usually come around.
But just to be clear, the wetland delineation was done on a current basis?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not exactly certain, but it was done currently enough to be located in the field in 2021. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just note that the riparian buffer is closest to the proposed dwelling on lot 3. I might have said this, but the closest corner of the proposed dwelling is actually 120 feet to the top of bank of the creek, but there's just significant wetland areas that, you know, need to be protected by that riparian buffer.
Could you map out lot 3 with the code compliant 50 feet? Did that? I mean, it looks like if you shifted it sideways.
So I believe that a smaller footprint would be required on the house. So what lot sheet 1 shows the subdivision, but if you go to sheet 2. With the front building setback where it is, and there's an existing channel where a culvert outlets. And obviously, we don't want to disturb that. So where the house is, it's situated between this existing existing stormwater channel and, you know, the building setbacks. So this current footprint, I don't think would work with a 50-foot riparian buffer.
How big is the footprint?
The building footprint, square footage wise, I'm not
Yeah.
exactly certain. I'd have to do some calculating here. So
2,000, 2,500? I'm gonna guess,
for lot 3,
at least.
3,600.
3,000 foot.
While they're contemplating that, maybe you want to speak to one of the review comments had to do with required plantings and maintenance of the buffer and establishment of a better buffer. So maybe do you have a response to that comment?
Yeah, I think we can comply with that. That's you know, it's a reasonable thing. It's now I don't know, maybe would you know anything about native plantings along riparian buffers? Okay, so. Yeah, so Scott Bush is Tom's ecologist. He has a great team of people working for him, architects. He's got his ecologist, he's got all sorts of consultants. And, so Scott Bush is an ecologist that could help with that plan. So it would, we could revise our landscape plan to show those plantings and in particular.
Right, so I just raise it because regardless of, we're contemplating it's a 50-foot versus. The code by default says 50 feet, but it does have provision which allows for a reduction to 25 foot. With township approval down to 10 feet with township waiver, so they're asking for the 25 foot, but regardless of the width. The code requires that the buffer be planted with native vegetation and maintain the vegetative state, and that would apply to the buffer across the property.
Now, I have a question. If there's existing vegetation, does that apply? Is that allowable and satisfactory, or does it have to be planted?
If there is vegetation that's already there, that would be that's native or is beneficial to keep. I mean, I would let the arborist probably would have final weigh in on that, but the intention is to establish a well vegetated buffer with native to improve, and that allowed that with the intention to improve water quality around the stream.
Yeah, in my opinion, this lot 3 could be viewed as, well, there's no backyard, but it could also be viewed as, this is a beautiful backyard to have this wild area of wetlands and planted native buffer. I could just envision someone sitting on the back of their deck with their binoculars, looking at, kingfishers and hummingbirds and all sorts of cool stuff. So to me, it takes me an hour and a half to mow my lawn once a week. And I'd almost rather have this situation. So I think there's definitely a client out there that could benefit from this particular layout.
Does the township have a specified distance from something such as this channel that's there? Or is that?
From that drainage channel, no, so that really is just that is the stormwater collection from Sawmill Road.
The swale kind of?
It's a swale, it's basically the stormwater that's collected from Sawmill Road many years ago. An outlet was installed to drop water down the hill. That really is a design that, we don't install stormwater anymore like going down the hill, but we don't have any specific requirement to be set back from that drainage channel.
How about moving the house forward?
It's pretty close to that front building setback.
Which line is that?
So I do have a dimension here. So the 75-foot required front yard, the porch is 76 feet from the front ultimate right away. So it's pretty much up against that. We gave it that extra foot to be safe. Doesn't make sense to slide it to the west because it'd be even closer to the riparian buffer. What makes sense would be to slide it to the east, but as we said, we don't want to disturb that existing stormwater channel there.
So what is the justification for reducing the buffer from 50 to 25? I'm missing it.
Oh, my.
The ordinance says, excuse me, the ordinance says that if a stream crosses the property and significantly affects the use of the property, that it can be reduced to 25 with township approval.
That's with an existing property, not a subdivision though, right? Like,
So I'll just want to read.
yeah, we'll clarify that.
So the code language is by the standard is, if there's a perennial intermittent stream that passes through, then a riparian buffer of 50 feet that's planted shall be established. And then there's a second provision below that. Following provisions also apply to riparian buffers on lots in existence at the time of adoption of this chapter. The stream traverses a site in a manner that significantly reduces the use of the site. The buffer may be either reduced to 25 feet, township approval, reduced to 10 feet with township waiver.
So this proposed lot 3 didn't exist at that time. That's what I'm trying to.
Right, so the overall,
So it would apply to the existing house,
Exactly.
if there was,
Yeah,
there is one,
there is a little one in the middle.
They're getting
There's a house.
but
that-
they're
yeah,
demoing.
Yeah,
There's one house now
yeah.
getting demolished, make way for 3.
Does that
Right.
constitute a new house? Because there's 3 new properties versus 1 existing being demolished.
I mean, no matter you slice it, this lot didn't exist when that code went in.
That's what I'm saying.
there's currently one lot.
Yeah,
So the first part of this application is there is one lot in existence that is being sought to divide into 3 lots as part of this current application, and then they would build houses on them.
do we have the authority to rule as if it was the existing one lot, even though it's being split to 3?
There's in a lot in. Currently a lot, there is a lot,
The ordinance says that provision applies to lots in existence at the time of the adoption of the ordinance. which
That's the
would-
question I'm asking. Yeah, but there,
So
you know, there
I'm
was
not sure
one
how
lot,
that
but not
applies to
3.
A further subdivision.
Recess the clock.
It would be absurd not to have it. Why create an ordinance that would impair an existing property? That doesn't make any sense.
But then if we subdivide, we're allowing someone to create a hardship in a subdivision.
I think the object is to.
I think when you ask for justification to do the impairment from going from 50 to 25, there needs to be some reason, and here the property owner or the prospective property owner wants to divide it from 1 lot into 3 lots, and he's saying presumptively, there's no other way to do it to get that 3rd lot. You know, won't comment that it's 12 acres and we're getting 3 lots and they're, I mean, could there be a different configuration? I don't know. Maybe with all the wetlands in the area, it is probably challenging.
Oh, you can see why the lot's still available. You know, there were a lot of easier lots for the last decade that got built out. No, I'm not saying it'd be awful to live there. I'm just saying it's not an easy development.
I don't disagree that it's a little difficult to follow the logic of the ordinance, but I think the plain reading of the ordinance does in fact say that it only applies the ability to reduce from 50 to 25 only applies to lots in existence at the time of the adoption of this chapter, A, and B, with respect to that larger lot, the reduction only applies if the stream traverses the site in a manner that significantly reduces the use of the site. Then you can reduce it to 25 feet with township approval. But again, we're talking about the original larger lot. And by definition, I don't know that we have the authority to grant that under the ordinance.
We should probably get Rich when he comes back to comment on that.
Yeah, I was thinking that, if you would have an action that maybe said contingent upon the solicitor's review of this issue.
Good, yeah, I mean, it's not.
So are you suggesting, assuming that they are able to,
I'm saying that if you want to act tonight on a condition of the solicitor reviewing it and determining whether or not this qualifies according to the legal description that's in our ordinance, I think you could suggest that if you wanted to. I'm not telling you that you need to. I'm just saying that that's an option if you wanted to move this forward. If you want that review before you go forward, I don't know where we are in the timeline. That would have to be discussed.
It started today. We have 90 days.
Okay.
Um,
Are you suggesting that this is the only design that can be made to get your 3 lots and would require the 25-foot setback as opposed to a 50-foot setback?
Well, I think this is the design that minimizes the potential impacts to all the environmentally sensitive parts of this property. It's, as I said, you have the existing stormwater channel, you know, to the east. Can't get any closer to that.
Does Darby Creek only affect the top corner of this property?
Yes. Yeah, in fact, the actual property corner is on the far side of Darby Creek. It's a monument, a stone monument. Yeah. We crossed the creek one day and found it.
And were there any other best management practices for the stormwater? I know Eric suggested some, and you know, that's just a big focus in the township, and probably everywhere these days.
Sure.
Were there any others that did make the cut that you know, might provide some comfort with regard to the request on the riparian buffer?
Well, these 4 facilities satisfy the stormwater management ordinance for groundwater recharge and you know, the best stormwater management is a floodplain wetland. That's what you want. You want a natural situation. And there's plenty of that habitat on this property currently that we're not disturbing. So in my mind, I mean, that's like one big rain garden. Go ahead, Andy.
Could you make improvements to that uncontrolled outfall that would help with the water quality entering into that wetland and floodplain? Is there a possibility of that could help mitigate some of the?
I think that's a good idea. I don't know about studying the you know, we would have to do a study of the upstream, you know, capacities and what's coming in, but I think that's a really good idea. In fact, I mean, yeah, I guess what we have right now doesn't pick any of that up, but that would be something we could.
Well, I think even just one on the property, so I would assume that outfall, it probably is there, it probably has a little riprap right at the base. But the rest is probably just a channel that's cut its way down the hill, which is unstabilized. So if you're able to stabilize that channel, that's actually going to reduce sediment coming down into the creek. That's probably a low hanging fruit to be able to reduce and improve the water quality at the bottom.
Yeah, I mean,
you're
we
already going to have the equipment right up next to it. Stabilize the grading of that channel.
That's a great idea. We would be willing to take that recommendation.
No, that area is not in the wetland, but it's as you're going down the hill, that just slowly eats its way into this hill, which. Right.
It's also a way to support your request for a waiver.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not asking for you to exceed what's required, but I know there's a lot of stress about the riparian buffer, so looking for sort of compensating. So, you know, look, you know, your engineering letter has, you know, a whole long list of will comply. And, you mentioned you're going to put some items in that Eric had mentioned. So unless somebody disagrees, we think we need to walk through this version of the engineering letter. If you're going to come back and, you know, we can take a look. he said, you know, 'cause the plans need to be revised.
I think it would be prudent for us to come back, we owe you a new tree plan because it is from earlier today, so. Like maybe get that in and come back and see you with revisions next month.
And then I'll go to public comment and then back to any board members
Okay. Thank you.
want to.
Gonna go to public comment now.
Yeah. Do we have any public comment? Name and address, please.
Paul Seligson, 4727 Mehallow Lane. You know, I just see it as two different vectors coming together. And this is just an unfortunate time, but one of the vectors is the time and energy that so many citizens here have put forth to fashion our ordinances and our resolutions and all of the bylaws under which we're guided. And I just think that it would be very unfortunate to just roll over and say, well, that's the rule on the books, but in this case, we're going to give it this, we're going to give it that. And another one is the density and the viciousness of the storms. And it could be that when all this was considered, storms weren't quite what they are these days. But I live right next to Crum Creek, and I can attest that Crum Creek is a much livelier, wilder creek these days than it was 20 years ago. And I'm, you know, I don't know this Thomas Run, but I can imagine that it runs fast in a storm. And the storms they dump more water, more intense, and you have to be really, really careful about that. That's my other comment.
Good evening, Cindy Mehallow, 87 Hunters Run, EAC Vice Chair. I just want to start by thanking you for your careful deliberation regarding this minor subdivision because it is very important property. I will have a number of points to make and I'll try to get through them as quickly as possible. You've been talking a lot about the details and I'd like to pull back and look at things from a strategic perspective. And that is in the comprehensive plan, the conservation element, which the Board of Supervisors drafted and adopted as a guiding principle for our township. In the conservation element of it, it specifically urges that the township continue to protect existing riparian buffers due to their sensitive nature and the impact they can have on properties, welfare of people, financial investments. And in addition to urging the township to protect the existing riparian buffers and not grant waivers for them, it further went beyond that and urged the township to extend the riparian buffers from 50 feet to a larger width. And as a matter of fact, at the current time, the Board of Supervisors is working with township staff, code enforcement, and the EAC to change the riparian buffer width and increase it. So as Paul mentioned, it seems that granting a reduction of the riparian buffer from 50 feet to 25 would not only be diametrically opposed to the existing comprehensive plan and its recommendations, but would be in contrast to a parallel effort that is going on right now within the township. Also, I'd like to point out what someone alluded to earlier, and well, actually, I don't think anyone's alluded to that, and that is that a simultaneous effort that is going on within the township now is the effort to comply with the MS4 stormwater management regulations. When that plan was first drafted by Stantec about 3 years ago, the estimated cost for compliance was $1.2 million. According to a study that was presented by the Township Finance Committee on April 28th of this year, if you look at the deck, it estimates the immediate impact for compliance to be 8.5 million. And that's only the immediate impact. Now, when you talk about numbers that big, it's easy to get kind of blown away by them and not see, well, how does this impact that? This does impact that. That 8.5 million is not going to be directed to one single stormwater management effort. It's death by 1,000 cuts. Every little change like this adds up to making it harder for the township to achieve the state requirements and more costly. Every time exceptions like this are granted to the existing ordinances, you're raising the cost for other taxpayers. It's cost shifting. So this homeowner wants to maximize the value of their property. Fine, I guess they're entitled to that. But I think you as a governmental body need to take a broader perspective and look at what are the impacts to the other residents, not only in our township, but in adjacent townships. And that was the purpose, and that is one of the issues that's addressed by the letters I believe you have before you from the Radnor Conservancy and from the DCVA, where these are our neighbors. These are the people who live right on the other side of Darby Creek. And while you can take a perspective that, well, this is our political boundary, this is what we should be concerned about. The fact is that nature and water and watersheds know no political boundaries. Whatever we do here, happens uphill on Sawmill, what happens at 311 Sawmill, that inevitably impacts our neighbors downstream. And in the interest of fulfilling the township vision of being a township of high integrity that respects our neighbors, I urge the planning commission to think about what would be the impacts on our neighbors downstream if you were to grant this. Also, why do we have ordinances that call for 50 feet buffers if we just, offer variances or waivers? When these ordinances were drafted, they were based on best management practices. This is the guidance and the wisdom from people that went before us that studied this and said, this is what we think is best for everybody. So I urge you to think about that when you consider this. Also, the engineer said, Thomas Run is a little stream. That's true. It is what is known as a first order stream. It is the smallest type of stream there is. And in actuality, that makes it the most important. If you look at wetlands ecologists and the DEP, they will tell you that protection of first order streams, headwater streams, is of paramount importance in protecting what happens downstream. Because when you increase runoff or degrade the habitat by impairing and disturbing the steep slopes and by getting too close to the stream, you are impairing the ability of that first order stream to function as it is. I would agree with Paul when he says that it's very important to think about the changing weather. And that person who lives in, whoever would buy that home in lot 3, the engineer repeatedly said, there is a lot of floodplain in lot 3. It's a low lot. If you look at the driveway, there's an 11-foot change in elevation from the beginning of the driveway to the house. That means there is water going to be coming down the driveway right to the outside of that person's garage. Then on the other side of the house, they have that culvert. There was going to be water rushing through that. Then right behind their house, they have a rain garden. There is no room for this house to have a patio, to have outside living. And once someone were to move in that house, how do you know they're going to maintain the rain garden? How do you know they're not going to start encroaching on that riparian buffer, which has already been minimized to 25 feet? I urge you to take all these things into consideration when you evaluate this. And I hope you will give due consideration to the letters from DCBA, Radnor Conservancy, and also Steve Norsini, the engineer from Radnor, who is well aware of the potential impact that changes to this lot could have on their township. Thank you.
Thank you.
While the comprehensive plan is a guideline or a document that tells us the direction we want to go, is it safe to say that the law on the books is the one that we follow, not the comprehensive plan?
Yeah, the zoning was not updated.
Correct. So the comprehensive plan, while it's there and it makes those comments, the law on the books is the one that we have to follow, right?
Yes.
Right. Now, if we want to amend those zoning laws or those planning codes, we can, right? And that comprehensive plan does guide us. But we've also got to keep in mind that the person who owns the property wants to develop the property. So the planning commission is granted opportunities to grant whether it's this case or some other case, the opportunity to grant waivers or requests to allow, because trees and watersheds, while significantly important, aren't the only thing that we're thinking about here. I wish if it was, that's a different story, but it's not. So we do have, it's a little bit more complex than just saying, hey, we don't want to disturb the watershed. There's a lot that goes into that also. And I think that while we have the comprehensive plan, the law on the books is the law on the books. We haven't amended it. So I think it's important to note those facts.
More public comment or no? Name and address, please.
My name is Janet Elliott. I live at 409 Timber Lane. If you're not familiar with Timber Lane, it's right off Sawmill, right down the street. And this project is a bundle of variances that are being sought to be changed. And I gotta tell you, I mean, the most ludicrous statement I've heard this tonight is that, oh, it's this, trees and woodland area, and it's going to be just fine. Well, you know what happens when you get these ordinances that you definitely want to change to diminish the watershed, diminish the type of environment that we are clinging to in this town. In this particular build and this construction, it's going to happen the next block in the next area and the next area, and it's going to go right through that whole area. So this trees and the watershed and all that stuff, it's going to be diminished greatly if you don't hold on to what we've got. Okay. I mean, I think Cindy has really nailed it, and Paul, but Cindy, really nails it down to what the ramifications of what we've seen over the last 15 years in this township, which has been disgraceful to some in terms of overbuild. But I live on Thomas Run, okay? I can tell you that it looks like a little stream until you get rain, until it's not. And then it looks like some scene out of a movie where, just ripping waves of water are coming down there, and it tears through everything, tears through all of your foliage, all your plants, all your gardening, everything you think you did over the last few years is gone like that, because that water is fierce when it comes down Thomas Run.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Is Thomas Run further up? Is it that large pond at the corner of Sawmill and Timber?
That's part of it.
So it's coming that close to Sawmill at that point, and then it kind of sneaks down.
Right. So every pond is a man-made pond. Okay, in this township, for number one. Some farmer needed to do something, or some developer wanted to do it, or whatever. So you have on Timber Lane, we have three large ponds that you're referring to in Timber Lane. Then up there's like a smaller one, and then there's mine. I have a pond, and then we have Thomas Run. Okay. So these ponds and we've only been, I haven't lived here my whole life or anything, but in the few decades or so that we've lived here, we have seen this humongous increase in flooding in water coming down. And, you know, one last story. When we first moved here in the summer, you go out in your yard at nighttime and you would have bats flying around. And the bats would eat thousands of mosquitoes every night. And then year after year, and the construction that happened in Lister was the big turning point where the bats are gone. They're totally gone. We actually installed bat nest houses on our roof in an attempt to try and get them back. And it doesn't sound like much, but those mosquitoes, okay, those are crucial importance in the ecology and our health, our physical health, okay, because of those mosquitoes are now multiplying like crazy because nobody's eating them. So, I mean, that's like a crazy story, but it's like, you know, anyway. Let's have Sheila come up and talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sheila O'Sullivan Feeney. I live at 120 Beechwood Road, Newtown Square, and I'm the Environmental Advisory Council Chair. You are doing a really important job tonight. I know we have code and ordinances, but something we have to understand is that we need you to be the front line of defense in protecting our environment. It's down to that. We have a code right now, 50. This gentleman owns a 12-acre lot. It would seem unbelievable that you couldn't have 10 acres, 10 homes on this property until you really dig into the property. Between the slopes and the severe slopes and the wetlands and the stormwater management, you're really limited in terms of what area you can get it. So 3 homes is presently what he's trying to. And we believe in the right of property owners. We want you to be successful in your property. We're just trying to find a way to make it work for everyone. We did put in some recommendations and we're asking you not to provide the variance for a 25 riparian buffer. Cindy mentioned the reasons why. You know that Darby Creek is 77 acres long. It goes through 33 townships. We are the 3rd one to touch this water. After it leaves us, it goes into Radnor, and then it comes, we get to connect into it again at Fox's Run. Everything that we do to this water is detrimental to the people downstream. You know that when we use nitrates on our grass and we want to have our grass looking green, and maybe when farmers put things, all of this goes into the sediment of the water. We need these wetlands to make places for the sediments to drop. And it's critical. And if you look at the Delaware County Sustainability Plan, and I really beg of you to look at this, look where we are going to be at 2040. Look at our neighbors downstream. We are creating flooding zones. So we are asking us, this is only 12 acres. And the sad part is you're coming in after we've had 15, 20 years of development. And it's unfortunate because you're probably a great guy, but you're at the end elevation point of everything that happened upstream. So it's hard because this is the nature of the land. A couple of things that the EAC would like you to also know is that we did see that there was a wetlands determination done on this. And I believe it was from 2009, which is 15 years ago. According to our census population from 2010 to 2020, we've nearly doubled our population. Double of our population means that there's been more homes, which means there's less water and have a chance to infiltrate back into the hydrology process. Water runoff encourages more storm erosion. In addition, along this road, Sawmill, I believe it was like 60 trees that were taken down. Okay, so this is really, if you pull up Darby Creek Valley Association on your phone and you look at how deep this water goes, you'll see it. Maybe there's a way we can work together, but we would like for you to consider the wetlands information. And since it is 15-year-old, that is concerning as well. We also did recommend a wildlife impact study. And we did pull up, did you get a chance to look at that? The IPAC, we did ask for a wildlife. We just recommended it. We don't have the authority. Well, we pulled up the IPAC. An IPAC is a resource form that lets us know what wildlife could be impacted in this area. They are telling us, and remember, I'm not an environmental engineer, but I talk to the environmental engineers to get this information. The mammals, there's Indiana bats, northern long-eared bats, the tricolored bats, a reptile, and the bog turtle habitat could be there. We don't know that for sure. But also in this area, bald eagles. I mean, this is form information that we should be presented with every land development. What is the wildlife impact for this area? So we beg of you, listen, we love the fact you're doing infiltration beds, phenomenal, rain gardens, awesome. And we would encourage you maybe to consider for the driveway, maybe permeable surfaces. What you're doing with the share in the driveway, that's an environmental win, believe it or not, because you're limiting the thing. So that's a really good thing. But let's try to work together. Let's see what we can do in encouraging you. And with your native plants and trees, you submitted the tree plans, but you didn't send the landscaping plans. We're looking at sedges, we're looking at native plants, we're looking at erosion control. You're only going to be disturbing, you said 11% of the steep slopes, right? But there's ways that you can mitigate through that and kind of keep everything from happening. I haven't been on your property, other people have. And when they were looking to buy it, and developers had said, the reason why this property was sitting is because of all these extenuating circumstances. So yes, it does sound like it's a lot of land. It should be able to have a lot of properties, but in reality, we have to deal with what we are. We beg of you to look at our land development forum. We beg of you to look at the letter that you received from DCDA, the Darby Creek Valley Association. Their president took the time to go into details of what this means to them. We ask you to look at to Radnor Township, their engineering, saying they are concerned because where does this water go? It is in our township for 2 seconds and it's dumped right into Sawmill Park. That is our neighbor. And our residents use those parks. So let's be considerate of our neighbors. We also ask you to look at Linda Mahizik. She sent a letter to you and she's the property above. She's experiencing tremendous problems and the Darby Creek goes through her property. So while we want to respect the rights of our property owner, they have the right to develop their property. We're asking you to hold the line and let's try to find a way to work around this particular situation. And let's make it an environmental win for everyone. I want to see you enjoy your property. I want you to have great neighbors there too, but I just want us to do it in a way that we can all work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And just for the record, is a couple, we did get 2 emails from, and we have a letter from the Radnor engineer, a letter from the Radnor Conservancy, and a letter from the Darby Creek Valley Association. Just confirming that we did have those in our possession. Any other public comment? Any member comments?
You, Mr. Damon, you had indicated that the design will significantly reduce storm water runoff.
Yes.
Will all stormwater runoff from the construction be retained on the property?
So for stormwater.
You can buy the mic just so that we might have.
And are you saying during construction?
No.
After construction.
Yeah, so our stormwater management report, we have a post-construction stormwater management report. And part of the satisfaction of the township stormwater management ordinance for this particular watershed is to reduce the storms. So we've reduced the proposed conditions significantly reducing the stormwater runoff from the present conditions. So it's actually an improvement. And that's done via the 4 stormwater management controls that I described.
The rain gardens.
There's 2 rain gardens and 2 infiltration trenches. They're shown on sheet 2.
Right there, Eric. How do you feel about that?
There, are you asking about his statement?
The assessment that it's better.
Right, so if you look at their stormwater report, it's actually a requirement of several of our drainage areas within the township and within the region. Even if you have a site where, let's say, there's just a single house on there, and you're gonna build, let's say, 3 houses in this case, even with the increase in pervious, they have to have stormwater management where the rate of water that's leaving the site, which would be in cubic feet of water leaving the site every second, it has to be lower. So they're proposing 4 facilities that basically capture the water, take that surge of water, slowly release it out of it, and then infiltrate a good portion of it. And that is the stormwater report. We still have some comments, we asked for clarification in the report. But it is demonstrating that they are reducing the stormwater below.
They are reducing the
Yes.
storm.
And I also point that as part of going through this process, the stormwater is also subject to review by the Delaware County Conservation District, even beyond us.
So it's subject to review has not been reviewed.
It will be, so
They will be.
because this, once you get over 1 acre of disturbance on the property, not only are you subject to the township review, the Delaware County Conservation District also has to review and provide, issue their own permit before any work can be done on the site.
And once the property gets developed, say it gets developed into 3 lots, and you've got these multiple rain gardens, how are they monitored?
So there, anytime that a developer or anybody builds on their site, you're required to install stormwater management. You then are also required to sign an agreement that's actually recorded at the county that you will in perpetuity and continue to the property, maintain that facility. Also required to post money into an account with the township for which we go out and do inspections on them on a annual every other year. So
Okay, I'm familiar with that. Okay,
yeah.
okay.
Stormwater operations and maintenance agreement, which are recorded
Okay,
and contain references to whatever BMPs are on site, et cetera.
okay.
And will be required by your ordinance to post money that would allow the township to inspect those from time to time. And if repairs are needed, it can be done and the property's lien. So there are protections.
How close is the rain garden to the backyard of this lot 3?
So are you referring to the house or?
Right, the distance between the house and the rain garden.
So if you're referring to, there's a berm there. If you're referring to the actual low-lying area, I actually don't have that dimensioned.
This looks really close.
top of it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, typically there's like a 10-foot minimum. Maybe Eric could speak to that. It's,
Well, you're saying the minimum, that is always, there's a required minimum spacing of 10 foot between a structure and a stormwater facility. And I can find the measurement here.
Would someone be permitted to put a deck over one?
no.
Only because I'm looking at a house with 3,000-foot footprint. They're gonna want a deck off the back.
So that actually speaks, there is a comment in my letter that asks for, indicates that the outside of the house and doesn't appear to have any outdoor facilities. Is there consideration given to outdoor?
I'm not to interrupt, but that footprint is intended to include a deck.
What's
That's that
on here
part
now
sticking
is
out.
The bump
includes
out
a deck.
the back.
The bump out in the back is supposed to be a deck.
So the house is basically a flat line.
Okay.
I would just add that
This watershed report to the EAC or the people that were speaking before.
You mean the stormwater management report?
Stormwater management.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
there,
saying I don't know if that's required or not, but maybe that.
I'm not sure. I mean, it doesn't seem like they have all the important information. Like the Tom's ecologist, I just saw the report. He extensively studied the areas and found no evidence of habitat that would support a bog turtle. We also did the Pennsylvania National Diversity Index study as a part of that, as a part of getting the sewage planning module. And took, had made all the required submissions to the US Fish and Wildlife Service and the other jurisdictions. And I would just reiterate that we're not proposing to disturb any wetlands or stream. And the only area of work that's relatively close to Thomas Run is the culvert, and that, to me, that's a large improvement. I'll reiterate, it's going to improve the flooding upstream because it's going to be such a bigger capacity. And to the comment about the pervious pavement, I don't know that that would support a fire truck.
Matt, I think we actually have an email from the fire marshal that said we should not be in favor of a pervious truck.
You think Thomas Run will get wider? You now allow water to go through much faster? I'm looking at I guess it's in lot 2. There's a floodplain line, the Thomas Run just comes short of butting up to it. But, if you allow twice as much water through, you think that stays the same dimension?
Yeah,
I don't know that it causes, a layout problem. I'm just asking if that's a dot that should, an I that should be dotted, we think that's an issue at all.
It's slightly lower in elevation, it's proposed to be. I don't foresee any significant changes. And furthermore, it's nowhere near, any of the construction, but
I'll just clarify maybe what you're reading from. They, as part of their, what ultimately because they're working with the culvert, they're gonna need the permit. They have completed their hydraulic and hydrologic study, which is the study of how the stream flows before and after with the culvert. And that is a document that will be part of their required permitting with the Department of Environmental Protection. Because anytime you're working within the stream, you're then subject to the state level regulation.
And would a certain result trigger something we should look back at? Or, it doesn't sound like we'll see that before it leaves our purview.
No, that is in all likelihood a several month process for them to get through that permit.
And so would that be available to the supervisors will probably hear it within a couple of weeks. I'm just asking, actually, I'm just trying to understand the process.
I think the point on that is if we were never able to obtain those permits for some reason, if you rejected it, then we could never build the plan. We'd have to come back and ask them, revise the plan. So even if the plan is approved, it would be subject to proper permitting of the culvert work and all that. If we were unable to get those, we could never build that plan.
Right. They might
We could
be,
never record that plan.
right. They may be comfortable with some adjustment in the stream, but if it was major, they wave their hands and say,
They say no, we'd have to go back to the drawing board and come up with a different plan.
okay, I'm just trying to understand. Any other comments, questions? The board?
We thank you very much for your time, and I guess we'll see you next month.
Thank you.
No, we don't have anything else. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thanks.